She stood on the marble porch, shivering in the freezing rain, clutching her swollen belly. Just moments ago, the man she loved more than life itself had thrown her out like garbage, all because his mother decided she wasn't high society enough for the Rutherford family image. They thought she was a penniless orphan, lucky to pick up their scraps. They laughed as the door slammed shut. But they made one fatal mistake. They didn't check the background of the girl they called a charity case. They had no idea that the shivering woman on their doorstep was actually Isabella Kensington, the sole heiress to the Kensington steel empire, and the owner of a secret $500 million trust fund that was about to activate the moment her baby was born. The thunder that rattled the windows of the Rutherford estate was nothing compared to the storm raging inside the library. "Get out!" Patricia Rutherford hissed, her voice dripping with the kind of icy venom only a woman of her perceived status could muster. She stood by the fireplace, sipping a glass of Chardonnay, not a hair out of place. "I want you and that bastard child gone before the clock strikes 12. Isabella gripped the edge of the mahogany desk, her knuckles turning white. She was 9 months pregnant, due any day, perhaps any hour. Her back ached, with a dull, throbbing pressure that had started 20 minutes ago, but she ignored it. The emotional pain was far sharper. "Liam." Isabella turned to her husband. She looked for the man who had promised to protect her, the man who had whispered sweet nothings to her in their cramped apartment before his family's business suddenly took off again. Liam Rutherford refused to meet her eyes. He was staring at the rug, fiddling with his wedding band. He looked smaller than usual, stripped of his spine by the overbearing presence of his mother. "It's for the best." "Bella," Liam mumbled, his voice devoid of affection. "Mother says... She says the merger with the DuPont family depends on image, and let's be honest, you don't fit the image." "I don't fit the image." Isabella's voice trembled. "I'm your wife, Liam. I'm carrying your son." "Is it his, though?" Patricia interjected, setting her glass down with a sharp clink. "You came from nowhere, Isabella. No family, no money, working as a waitress in that dusty diner downtown. For all we know, you trapped my son to get a slice of the Rutherford pie. Well, the pie is closed." Patricia walked over to the desk and tossed a check onto it. It fluttered to the floor, landing near Isabella's swollen feet. $5,000, Patricia said dismissively. "That should cover a taxi and an abortion, though I suppose it's too late for that. Consider it severance pay for your services as a distraction for my son." Isabella looked at the check. $5,000. To them, she was a problem to be paid off. They saw her ragged sweater and her lack of designer jewelry and assumed she was desperate. They assumed she was weak. "I don't want your money," Isabella said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Don't be a martyr, dear. It's boring," Patricia snapped. "Chloe DuPont is arriving tomorrow. She's the daughter of a senator. She has class, pedigree, and connections. She is the woman Liam should have married. We need this house cleared of your clutter." Isabella looked at Liam one last time. "Liam, if I walk out that door, I am never coming back. You will never see your son." Liam finally looked up. His eyes were cold, hardened by greed and fear of his mother. "Just go, Bella. You're making a scene. Chloe she's better for the company, better for my future." The betrayal hit her physically. It felt like a punch to the gut, coinciding with another sharp contraction that nearly doubled her over. She gasped, grabbing her stomach. "Stop the dramatics," Patricia scoffed. "Johnson has already packed your bags. They are on the curb. Now leave, or I'll have security drag you out." Isabella straightened her spine. Despite the oversized, cheap maternity clothes and the exhaustion etched into her pale face, a strange flicker of dignity passed through her eyes. It was a look Patricia hadn't seen before, a look of ancient, quiet power. "You're right, Patricia," Isabella said, her voice suddenly steady. "I don't fit in here." She turned and walked out of the library, bypassing the check on the floor. The hallway was a gauntlet of memories, photos of her and Liam from when they were happy, or at least when she thought they were. She walked to the heavy oak front doors. Johnson, the butler, stood there. He looked sympathetic, his eyes cast down. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Rutherford," he whispered as he opened the door. "It's okay, Johnson," she said softly. "You're just doing your job." She stepped out. The rain was torrential. It hit her instantly, soaking her hair and clothes within seconds. Her 2 suitcases, cheap, battered things she had bought at a thrift store, were sitting in a puddle at the bottom of the stairs. The door clicked shut behind her. The sound of the lock turning was final. Isabella stood alone in the dark, the freezing rain mixing with the hot tears finally spilling down her cheeks. A jagged bolt of lightning illuminated the sprawling estate, a house she had cleaned, decorated, and turned into a home only to be evicted like a stray dog. Another contraction hit this one, longer, harder. She groaned, leaning against the wet brick of the gate pillar. She had nowhere to go. No car. Liam had taken the keys to the sedan for the company. No phone. She had left it on the counter, inside in her shock. She dragged her suitcases toward the main road, her body screaming in protest. She wasn't just a poor girl kicked to the curb. She was a woman who had spent the last 2 years hiding a secret so massive it would swallow the Rutherfords whole. She wasn't Isabella Smith from the diner. She was Isabella Kensington. And she had a phone call to make as soon as she could find a payphone. The walk to the nearest gas station took 40 minutes. For a woman in active labor, it was an eternity of agony. Every step was a battle against gravity and pain. The freezing rain had numbed her skin, but the fire of betrayal kept her moving. When she finally pushed open the door of the stop and go, the bell chimed cheerfully, a stark contrast to her reality. The teenage clerk behind the counter dropped his phone, his eyes widening as he saw the soaking wet, pregnant woman dragging luggage through the door. "Lady, are you okay?" he stammered. "Phone," Isabella rasped, leaning heavily on the counter. "I need a phone." Yeah, sure. Use the landline." He pushed the greasy beige phone toward her. Isabella's shaking fingers dialed a number she hadn't used in 3 years. It was a number memorized since childhood. A number that connected directly to a private office in a skyscraper in Manhattan, an office that never closed. It rang once, twice. "Pellington Law Private Line, Arthur speaking," a crisp, elderly voice answered. "Arthur," Isabella choked out, her voice breaking. "It's Bella." There was a silence on the other end, so profound it felt like the world had stopped. Then the sound of a chair scraping back urgently. "Miss Isabella, good God, child, is that really you? We've had investigators looking for you from London to Tokyo for 36 months. Where are you?" I'm in Georgia. Savannah." She winced as a contraction seized her lower back. "Arthur, I need help. I'm having a baby. Right now." "A baby?" Arthur's voice shifted from shock to military-grade efficiency. "Stay exactly where you are. I am tracking the call. I'll have a medical team there in 10 minutes. Are you safe?" "I'm safe for now. she whispered, looking out at the rain. But Arthur, activate it. Activate what, Miss Isabella? The trust, the Kensington clause. Activate it all. My husband, my ex-husband. He threw me out. They think I'm a nobody. They did what? Arthur's voice dropped an octave, turning into a low growl. Arthur Pellington wasn't just a lawyer. He was the fiercely loyal executor of her late father's estate, a man who had guarded the Kensington fortune with the ferocity of a dragon. Miss Isabella, do they know who you are? No, she said. I wanted to be loved for me, Arthur. I wanted to believe he loved me. Not the steel mills, not the shipping lines, not the billions. So I hid it. I played the poor orphan, and he threw me away for a senator's daughter. That foolish, foolish man, Arthur muttered. He has just made the most expensive mistake in history. I am mobilizing the jet. I will be there by morning. The medical team is dispatching from St. Joseph's Hospital now. Do not hang up. Isabella slid down to the floor, clutching the receiver. The clerk was staring at her mouth agape. You rich or something? The kid asked, looking at her ragged clothes. Isabella looked up, her hair plastered to her face, eyes burning with a new resolve. I own the bank this gas station owes money to, she murmured, half delirious from the pain. 10 minutes later, the flashing lights of an ambulance cut through the storm. While Isabella was being rushed into the VIP wing of St. Joseph's, a wing that had been mysteriously paid for in full by an anonymous corporation 5 minutes prior to her arrival, Liam Rutherford was pouring champagne. The Rutherford estate was warm and dry. Patricia was sitting on the velvet sofa looking triumphant. You did the right thing, Liam, she cooed. Chloe DuPont arrives at noon tomorrow. We'll have a lunch, discuss the merger, and by next week the Rutherford name will be back on top of the social register. That girl, that weight around your neck is gone. Liam drank the champagne, but it tasted like vinegar. She was 9 months pregnant, Mother. It's storming. She's resilient. Rats always survive the sewer, Patricia said, waving her hand. Besides, she'll go to a shelter. She's used to that life. We have to focus on the future. The DuPonts are worth $50 million, Liam. 50 million. Imagine what we can do with that capital. Liam nodded, trying to convince himself. 50 million. It was a lot of money. It was enough to save their failing real estate ventures. It was worth sacrificing a wife he had grown bored of, right to the future. Liam toasted weakly. To the future. Patricia smiled. They had no idea that the future was currently lying in a hospital bed 5 miles away, holding a newborn baby boy named Leo. They had no idea that the woman they called a rat had just signed a document authorizing Arthur Pellington to freeze all assets connected to the Kensington Global Group's subsidiaries. And unfortunately for Patricia Rutherford, the bank that held the mortgage on her precious estate was one of those subsidiaries. Back at the hospital, the morning sun was just breaking through the clouds. Isabella held Leo against her chest. He was tiny, perfect, and had her dark eyes. Arthur Pellington stood by the bedside. He was a tall man in his 60s, wearing a suit that cost more than Liam's car. He looked at the baby, then at Isabella. He is beautiful, Miss Isabella, a true heir. He's perfect, she whispered. Did you do it, Arthur? It is done. Arthur nodded, pulling a file from his briefcase. The Kensington Trust is fully active. Your liquidity is currently $512 million. I have also taken the liberty of purchasing a temporary residence for you, the penthouse at the Four Seasons, until we can ready the Kensington Manor. And the Rutherfords? Isabella asked, her voice hardening. Arthur allowed himself a small, shark-like smile. I have just instructed the bank to call in their loans. They are over-leveraged, Miss Isabella. They haven't paid their business loans in 3 months. Usually the bank would give a grace period, but as the majority shareholder, you have the right to demand immediate repayment. They don't have the cash, Isabella said. They're broke. That's why they needed the DuPont merger. Precisely, Arthur said. By noon today, they will receive a notice of default. By tomorrow, foreclosure proceedings begin. And I have already contacted Senator DuPont. You did? Yes. I informed him that the Rutherfords are under investigation for financial fraud. Technically true, now that I've seen their cooked books. The senator was displeased. He has cancelled Chloe's visit. Isabella looked out the window at the city skyline. She had spent 2 years scrubbing floors and cooking meals for a man who treated her like an accessory. She had tried to be humble. She had tried to be Bella Smith. They kicked me out in the rain, Arthur, she said softly. They wanted me to feel what it was like to have nothing. She looked down at her son. Now, she whispered, I'm going to show them what it feels like to lose everything. The following morning, the Rutherford estate was a theatre of desperate perfection. The storm had passed, leaving the sky a bruised purple. But inside the mansion, the air was stiflingly still. Patricia Rutherford moved through the dining room like a general inspecting the front lines. She ran a manicured fingernail along the rim of a baccarat crystal goblet, checking for dust. There was none, of course. Johnson had polished the silver until his fingers ached, terrified of receiving the same fate as Isabella. The lobster bisque must be served at exactly 12:15. Johnson, Patricia commanded, adjusting a vase of white lilies imported that morning from Holland. Senator DuPont is a man of punctuality. If we are late, we look disorganized. If we look disorganized, we look risky. Yes, madame, Johnson murmured, his eyes hollow. He missed Isabella. He missed the way she would sneak into the kitchen to help him dry dishes, humming soft lullabies. The house felt colder without her, as if the heating system had failed along with the family's morality. Liam sat at the head of the table nursing a cup of black coffee. He looked wretched. The previous night's champagne had turned sour in his stomach, and sleep had been impossible. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Isabella's face wet with rain, contorted in pain. He heard her final whisper, "You will never see your son." "Fix your tie, Liam," Patricia snapped, breaking his trance. "You look like a funeral director. Smile. You are about to become the son-in-law of a senator." "Do you think she's okay?" Liam asked, his voice cracking. Patricia froze, a flicker of genuine annoyance crossing her face. "Who the girl, Liam, honestly? She's probably halfway to Alabama by now, on a Greyhound bus. People like her. They bounce back. They're used to hardship. We are not. Focus on what matters." The grandfather clock in the hallway began to chime. Dong, dong, dong. Noon. Patricia smoothed her skirt, a smile plastered on her face, ready to greet Chloe DuPont and her father. They waited. The silence in the large foyer was heavy, amplified by the ticking of the clock. 12:10. "Traffic?" Patricia said dismissively. "The roads are still wet from the storm." 12:20. Liam loosened his tie. "They're not coming, Mother." "Don't be ridiculous. The senator confirmed with me 3 days ago." At 12:30, the heavy oak door finally knocked. It was a sharp, authoritative rap, not the polite knock of a social guest. Patricia let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Finally. Johnson, get the door." Liam stood up, forcing a smile, rehearsing his opening line about the synergy between Rutherford real estate and the DuPont political influence. Johnson opened the door, but it wasn't the blonde, elegant Chloe DuPont, nor the distinguished senator. Standing on the porch was a man in a wet grey trench coat, holding a leather satchel. He looked bored. "Liam Rutherford?" the man asked. Yes." Liam stepped forward, confused. "Is the senator in the car?" "I don't know any senator," the man said, pulling a thick envelope from his satchel. "I'm a courier for First National Bank of Georgia. I need a signature for receipt." "A bank courier!" Patricia stormed forward, her heels clicking aggressively on the marble. "We are expecting guests. Use the service entrance." "What is this nonsense?" "Legal notice, ma'am. Priority 1. The man shoved a clipboard at Liam. "Sign here." Liam signed his hand, shaking. The courier ripped the copy handed over the envelope and turned to leave without another word. Patricia snatched the envelope from Liam's hands. Probably just a credit card offer or some administrative error. These banks are incompetent. She tore it open. Inside wasn't a marketing flyer. It was a single sheet of heavy cream-colored legal paper with the bank's letterhead embossed in gold. Patricia began to read. Her face went pale, then grey. She staggered back, her hand, groping for the edge of the hallway table to steady herself. "Mother!" Liam grabbed her arm. "What is it?" Patricia couldn't speak. She just thrust the paper at him. Liam read the bold text in the center of the page. "Notice of immediate call on principal. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Rutherford, pursuant to Clause 14, B of your commercial loan agreement. The Risk and Stability Clause. First National Bank of Georgia has re-evaluated the collateral assets of Rutherford Estates. Due to recent internal audits revealing significant liquidity gaps and projected insolvency, the bank is exercising its right to demand immediate repayment of the outstanding principal balance. Total amount. Due $4,250,000. Deadline 24 hours from receipt of notice. Failure to remit full payment will result in immediate foreclosure proceedings and the seizure of all personal and business assets listed as collateral, including the residence at 4400 Oakhaven Lane. $4 million, Liam whispered, the room spinning. We don't have $4 million. We don't even have 400,000 liquid. Get the senator on the phone, Patricia shrieked, her voice shrill and terrifying. Call him. Now, if we sign the merger today, we can use the advance to pay this off. Liam fumbled for his phone, his fingers slippery with sweat. He dialed Senator DuPont's private cell. It rang and rang. Then a click. This is DuPont. The voice was cold, professional, and distant. Senator, it's Liam. Liam Rutherford. We were waiting for you and Chloe. Is everything all right? Mr. Rutherford. The senator's voice sounded like a judge reading a death sentence. I was just about to call you. My daughter will not be attending lunch, nor will I. But the merger, the agreement. There will be no merger, son. I received a very interesting dossier this morning regarding your company's financial health. It seems you've been cooking the books to hide a massive deficit. I cannot have my family associated with fraud. That's a lie, Liam shouted, looking at his mother. Who told you that? My sources are impeccable, the senator said. Furthermore, I heard a rumor about how you treat your family. A pregnant wife thrown into a storm. Georgia is a small state, Liam. Word travels fast. Do not contact my daughter again. The line went dead. Liam dropped the phone. It clattered loudly on the marble floor. "He knows," Liam whispered. "He knows everything." Patricia sank onto the stairs, burying her face in her hands. For the first time in her life, the grand Rutherford estate didn't feel like a castle. It felt like a tomb. 24 hours. That was how long it took for the Rutherford dynasty to crumble. The next day was a blur of frantic phone calls, pawned watches, and screaming matches. Patricia had called every contact she had in Savannah high society. Friends she had known for 30 years suddenly had bad reception or were out of town. The smell of failure was potent, and their social circle avoided it like a plague. By 10 o'clock a.m. the next day, they had managed to scrape together $40,000. It was a drop of water in an ocean of debt. "We have to go to the bank," Patricia said, her eyes red-rimmed and wild. She hadn't slept. She was wearing yesterday's clothes, a cardinal sin for a Rutherford. "We have to beg for an extension. We have lived in this town for generations. They won't just throw us out. I know the branch manager, old Mr. Henderson. He'll listen to reason." They drove to First National in silence. The rain had started again, a grey drizzle that matched their mood. When they walked into the bank, they bypassed the tellers and marched straight to the glass-walled office at the back. But Mr. Henderson wasn't there. Instead, a young woman with sharp glasses and a tablet stood up. "Mr. and Mrs. Rutherford," she asked, blocking their path. "We need to see Henderson," Patricia demanded, trying to summon her old authority. "Now." "Mr. Henderson retired yesterday. Effective immediately," the woman said calmly. "I am the transition manager, and I'm afraid your file is no longer with this branch." "What do you mean?" Liam asked, his voice trembling. "Your debt was sold," the woman explained, tapping on her tablet. "As of 8 o'clock a.m. this morning, your mortgage and business loans were acquired by a private holding company. First National no longer holds your note." "Sold?" Patricia gasped. "To whom? Who holds our lives?" "A firm called Aegis Ventures," the woman said. "They have requested your presence immediately to discuss the terms of your surrender. They are waiting for you." "Surrender?" Liam flinched at the word. "Where are they?" "The penthouse suite at the Four Seasons Hotel. You have 1 hour." The drive to the Four Seasons was the longest of Liam's life. Patricia sat in the passenger seat, applying lipstick with a shaking hand, muttering about how she would charm this new investor. She convinced herself that this Aegis Ventures was just a shark looking for a deal, someone she could manipulate. They arrived at the hotel, the epitome of luxury. The doorman ushered them to a private elevator that required a key card. "Top floor," the doorman said, pressing the button. The elevator rose swiftly, and with every floor, Liam felt the air getting thinner. He felt a strange sense of déjà vu. This was the hotel where he and Isabella had spent their honeymoon night, a single night, because it was all they could afford back then. The doors slid open. They stepped into a massive suite, featuring floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the entire city of Savannah. The room was sleek, modern, and smelled of expensive leather and fresh orchids. In the center of the room sat a long glass conference table. At the far end, a high-backed leather chair was turned away from them, facing the window and the grey, rainy city. Standing next to the chair was an older man in an impeccable charcoal suit. He looked like a statesman or perhaps an executioner. It was Arthur Pellington. "Mr. and Mrs. Rutherford," Arthur said, his voice deep and resonating. "Please sit." Patricia didn't sit. She marched up to the table. "Who are you? I demand to speak to the owner of Aegis Ventures. We are here to negotiate a payment plan, not to be lectured by a secretary. Arthur smiled, but his eyes were cold as flint. "I am Arthur Pellington, Senior Counsel for the Kensington Trust, and you are in no position to demand anything, Mrs. Rutherford. You are currently trespassing on property owned by the holder of your debt." "Kensington Trust?" Liam frowned. "I've never heard of it." "No," Arthur said. "You wouldn't have. It is a private family fund. Very private, and very protective of its beneficiaries." "Look," Liam pleaded, stepping forward. "We can pay. We just need time. 3 months. If you give us 3 months, you had time." A voice came from the high-backed chair. Liam froze. The voice was soft, melodic, but laced with a steeliness he didn't recognize. Yet the timbre was hauntingly familiar. The chair slowly swiveled around. Patricia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Liam's knees buckled, and he had to grab the back of a chair to stay upright. Sitting there was Isabella. But it wasn't the Isabella they knew. This wasn't the woman in the frayed maternity sweater scrubbing their floors. This Isabella wore a structured white blazer that looked like it cost more than Liam's car. Her dark hair was blown out in sleek, glossy waves. Around her neck hung a simple, solitaire diamond pendant that caught the light with a blinding fire. She looked tired, her skin was pale, and there were faint shadows under her eyes, but that only added to her ethereal, terrifying beauty. In her arms, wrapped in a blanket of blue cashmere, slept a newborn baby. "Bella," Liam whispered, his voice barely a breath. You own the debt." Isabella looked at him. Her eyes, once full of warmth and adoration for him, were now 2 deep pools of indifference. "Hello, Liam," she said quietly. "Hello, Patricia." "This is a joke," Patricia stammered, her face flushing a deep, ugly red. You waitress, you con artist, who did you sleep with to get this?" "Careful, Mrs. Rutherford," Arthur warned, his voice like a whip crack. "You are speaking to the sole heiress of the Kensington Steel Empire. Her net worth exceeds $500 million. And she is the legal owner of the house you slept in last night." The silence that followed was absolute. The reality of it crashed down on Liam. The orphan with no family. The charity case. You had money?" Liam asked, his voice thick with betrayal. "All this time you let us struggle. You let me stress about bills while you sat on millions." Isabella's expression shifted. A spark of anger ignited in her eyes. "I didn't let you struggle, Liam. I paid off your credit card debt 3 times with my tips from the diner. I bought the groceries. I kept you afloat while you played businessman." Isabella said, her voice rising slightly. "I wanted to know if you loved me, not my checkbook. I wanted a husband, not a leech." She looked down at the sleeping baby. "And when I was at my most vulnerable," she continued, looking back up at them, "when I carried your son and begged for shelter, you showed me exactly what I was worth to you. $5,000. She reached onto the glass table and picked up a piece of paper. It was the check Patricia had thrown at her. Isabella ripped it in half, slowly, the sound tearing through the room. "I don't want your money, Liam." She repeated the words she had said in the library. "But I will take my dignity back." "Bella, please." Liam stepped forward, tears welling in his eyes. Whether they were tears of regret or greed, even he didn't know. "That's my son. I'm a father. You can't just... a father." Isabella laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "A father protects. A father doesn't throw his child into a thunderstorm." She turned to Arthur. "Mr. Pellington," Isabella said softly, "proceed with the foreclosure. I want them out of my house by sunset." "No!" Patricia screamed, lunging forward. "You can't do this. We have rights. That is my home." "It was never your home, Patricia," Isabella said, her voice turning to ice. "It was the bank's home. And now, it's the baby's nursery." Isabella stood up, wincing slightly from the pain of recovery, but Arthur was instantly at her side to support her arm. She looked at Liam one last time. "You wanted a merger, Liam. You wanted a business transaction." She gestured to the door. "You just made the worst deal of your life. Now get out." The drive back to Oakhaven Lane was a funeral procession of two. Liam drove his luxury sedan, a car he now knew the bank would seize within 48 hours, with a numbness that frightened him. Beside him, Patricia Rutherford sat in a catatonic silence. She wasn't screaming anymore. She was staring at her reflection in the side mirror, watching the lines of age and terror deepen with every passing mile. They pulled into the driveway just as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long, bruised shadows across the lawn. But they were not alone. Two sheriff's cruisers were already parked near the fountain. A moving truck, unmarked and imposing, idled next to them. "They didn't wait," Liam whispered, gripping the steering wheel. "She said sunset. She meant it to the minute." Patricia opened the car door and stumbled out, her heels catching on the gravel. "Get off my property!" she shrieked at a deputy who was placing a neon orange sticker on the front door. "This is Rutherford land. My grandfather built this wing." The deputy, a burly man named Officer Miller, who had pulled Liam over for speeding twice before and been talked down to by Patricia both times, turned around slowly. He didn't look angry. He looked pitying. "It's not your property anymore, ma'am," Miller said, handing her a clipboard. "Eviction notice pursuant to the writ of immediate possession. The locks have already been changed." "Changed?" Patricia gasped. "My clothes, my jewelry, my life is in there. You have supervised access for 2 hours to remove personal essentials," Miller recited from the script. "Essentials defined as clothing, toiletries, and legal documents. No furniture, no art, no assets listed in the collateral schedule." "The Matisse in the hallway?" Patricia asked, her voice trembling. "Asset," Miller said. "The silver tea set, asset." Liam walked past his mother, who was now weeping into the deputy's chest, and entered the house. Inside it was a hive of activity. Movers hired by the bank, hired by Isabella, were efficiently cataloguing everything. Liam walked to the library, the same library where he had stood 3 days ago, and watched his wife beg for shelter. The room was already half empty. The books were in boxes. The rug where Isabella had stood, dripping wet, was rolled up. He sat on the edge of the bare desk. The silence of the house was gone, replaced by the sound of packing tape. Zzz, rip, rip, a sound that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He looked at the fireplace. There, resting on the mantel, was a small framed photo that the movers hadn't touched yet. It was a Polaroid from their first date at the diner. Isabella was wearing her apron, laughing, smeared with flour. Liam looked young, happy, and unburdened by his mother's expectations. He reached for it, his fingers brushing the glass. "That stays," a voice said from the doorway. Liam turned. It was Arthur Pellington. The lawyer had arrived to oversee the transition personally. "It's a photo of me," Liam said, his voice hoarse. "It is a photo of the trust's beneficiary," Arthur corrected, walking into the room and gently taking the frame from Liam's hand. "Miss Kensington requested that all personal mementos regarding her past be collected and brought to her. She wishes to decide what to burn and what to keep." She's going to burn it, Liam asked, a lump forming in his throat. She wants to purge the infection. Mr. Rutherford, Arthur said, placing the photo into a velvet-lined briefcase. You broke her heart. Now she is breaking your legacy. Arthur paused, looking around the stripping library. You know, Arthur said conversationally. Isabella called me the night she met you. She was so excited. She said she met a man who didn't care about the size of a wallet. She told me she was going to wait to tell you about the money until your first anniversary. She wanted it to be a surprise. Liam closed his eyes. The pain was physical, a sharp twisting in his gut. Our first anniversary, Liam whispered. That was next week. Indeed. Arthur clicked the briefcase shut. She had the papers drawn up to transfer $50 million into a joint account for you to start your own firm, apart from your mother. Liam let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh. 50 million. He had thrown away a woman who loved him, a son and a fortune, all for a merger that never happened. Time is up, Mr. Rutherford, Arthur said, checking his watch. The sheriff is waiting to escort you off the premises. 10 minutes later, Liam and Patricia stood on the curb. They had 4 suitcases between them. The heavy iron gates of the estate swung shut with a final metallic clang. Patricia sat on her Louis Vuitton suitcase, staring at the closed gate. She looked like a deposed queen, broken and aged 10 years in a single day. Where do we go, Liam? She whispered. The club won't take us. The Duponts won't answer. Liam looked at his mother. For the first time, he saw her not as the matriarch, but as the architect of his destruction, and he saw himself as the willing contractor. I don't know, Mother, Liam said, picking up his bag. But we can't stay here. It looks like it's going to rain. 3 months passed. Winter had settled over Savannah, turning the Spanish moss into grey, ghostly curtains. In a cramped second-floor walk-up apartment on the wrong side of town, the heating radiator hissed and clanked, struggling to fight the chill. The wallpaper was peeling, smelling faintly of boiled cabbage and stale cigarettes. Liam Rutherford sat at a wobbly Formica table, staring at the classified section of the newspaper. He had circled 3 jobs: night shift warehouse dishwasher and telemarketer. He had applied for executive positions at first. But word travels fast in the South. The Rutherford collapse was the scandal of the decade. No reputable firm wanted to hire the man who had evicted his pregnant wife and defrauded a senator. He was radioactive. In the next room, Patricia lay in bed. She rarely got up anymore. She spent her days watching daytime television, muttering about how there had been a misunderstanding and how the lawyers would fix it soon. She refused to accept that the lawyers were gone, the friends were gone, and the money was gone. Liam rubbed his face. His hands were rough now. He had spent the last month working construction off the books, carrying drywall until his back screamed just to pay the rent on this hole. He heard a knock at the door. He froze. Visitors usually meant debt collectors. He opened it a crack. It was a process server, a young kid chewing gum. Liam Rutherford. Yes, served. The kid slapped a thick envelope into his chest and walked away. Liam closed the door and slid down to the floor. He recognized the seal on the envelope. Pellington and Associates. His hands shook as he tore it open. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was a finalized divorce decree. And a custody order. He scanned the legal jargon until his eyes landed on the summary. Sole legal and physical custody awarded to mother. Father's rights terminated due to proven neglect and endangerment. There was no visitation schedule, no weekends, no holidays. Attached to the back of the legal documents was a handwritten note. The handwriting was elegant, looping Isabella's. Liam unfolded it. Liam, I thought about fighting you in court for years. I thought about dragging your name through the mud until you couldn't walk down the street. But I realized that you are already doing that to yourself. Leo is smiling now. He has a dimple on his left cheek, just like you used to have, before you let the world harden you. I tell him his father is away. Someday I will tell him the truth, that his father was a man who was too afraid to be his own person. Enclosed is something I found in your things when I cleared out the manor. I think you should have it. It's the only thing of yours I didn't burn. Goodbye, Liam. Bella. Liam reached into the envelope again. His fingers closed around a small velvet box. He opened it. Inside was a silver locket. He recognized it immediately. It was his grandmother's locket, the one piece of jewelry Patricia hadn't been able to pawn because Liam had hidden it years ago, intending to give it to his future wife. He had given it to Isabella on their wedding day. She had worn it every day until the end. He pried the locket open with a trembling thumbnail. Inside there was a tiny folded piece of paper, compressed into the small circle of silver. He carefully tweezed it out and unfolded it. It was a note dated the day of the storm, the day he kicked her out. My dearest Liam, I know things have been hard with your mother lately. I know you feel the pressure. But I have a secret that will change everything. I've been scared to tell you because I wanted to be sure, but watching you hold the neighbor's baby yesterday, I knew. I'm going to use my inheritance to save the house. But more than that, I'm going to buy us a house of our own. Just us. You, me, and the baby. We can finally be free. I love you more than all the money in the world. Yours, Bella. Liam read the note once. Twice, a primal wail built up in his chest, a sound of absolute shattering regret. She was going to save them. That very night. If he had just stood up to his mother for 5 minutes. If he had just held her hand and told her he loved her. If he had just been decent. He would be in a mansion right now, holding his son safe and loved. Instead, he was sitting on a stained carpet in a freezing apartment, holding a piece of paper that proved he had thrown away paradise with his own 2 hands. From the bedroom, Patricia called out, her voice shrill and demanding. Liam, my tea is cold. Bring me fresh tea. Liam looked at the bedroom door. He looked at the locket. He stood up, walked to the kitchen, and turned on the tap. The water was brown at first, then cleared. He wasn't going to bring her tea. He wasn't going to listen to her anymore. He put the locket in his pocket. He grabbed his coat. Liam, Patricia called again. Liam. Liam walked out the front door and didn't look back. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew he had to start walking. He had to become a man worthy of the son he might never meet again. Meanwhile, across the city, the iron gates of the Kensington Manor, formerly Rutherford estate, stood open. The grounds were transformed. The stiff, pretentious hedges were gone, replaced by wild, blooming rose gardens. The gloomy grey paint of the house had been sandblasted away to reveal the warm, natural brick underneath. Isabella sat on the sun porch, rocking Leo in a handmade wooden chair. The baby was cooing, reaching up for the sunlight filtering through the glass. Arthur Pellington sat across from her, sipping tea. The papers were delivered, Arthur said softly. I know, Isabella replied, not looking up from her son. Do you think he will change? Arthur asked. Isabella paused. She traced the curve of Leo's ear. I think suffering has a way of clarifying things, Arthur. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. But that's not my story anymore. She stood up, lifting Leo high into the air. The baby giggled a pure, joyous sound that filled the massive, renovated house. This is my story now. Isabella smiled, pulling her son close. And we have a lot of living to do. 5 years later. The autumn sun hung low over Forsyth Park, casting a golden hue over the famous fountain. The air was crisp, smelling of fallen oak leaves and roasted peanuts from a nearby vendor. Isabella walked along the paved path, the click of her boots rhythmic and confident. She was no longer just the silent heiress the tabloids had obsessed over. She was Isabella Kensington, CEO of the Kensington Foundation, a woman who had built 20 shelters for single mothers across the state in the last half-decade. She wore a camel-colored trench coat, her hair pulled back in a loose, elegant bun. But her attention wasn't on her phone or the stack of business proposals in her bag. It was entirely focused on the 5-year-old boy running ahead of her. Leo was a ball of energy chasing a rogue squirrel with the kind of innocent determination only a child possesses. He wore a navy blue coat and a bright red scarf, his laughter ringing out like a bell. "Leo, stay where I can see you," Isabella called out, a smile playing on her lips. "I see him, Mom." "I'm gonna catch him," Leo shouted back, sprinting toward a bed of azaleas being tended to by a kneeling groundskeeper. The squirrel darted into the bushes. Leo skidded to a halt, nearly tripping over the groundskeeper's rake. "Whoa there, little man," the worker said, his voice rough but gentle. He reached out a gloved hand to steady the boy. "Brakes work." "Sorry." Leo giggled, breathless. "Did you see the squirrel? He went in there." The worker chuckled, wiping sweat from his brow with his forearm. He was a man in his mid-30s, his face tanned and weathered from years of outdoor labor. He wore a neon safety vest over a faded flannel shirt. There were streaks of dirt on his cheek and silver threads of premature gray in his beard. "Squirrels are fast," the man said, kneeling down to Leo's eye level. "You gotta be faster. You gotta possess patience." Isabella caught up to them, her heart jumping slightly when she saw Leo talking to a stranger. "Leo, everything okay?" The groundskeeper froze. The voice. He knew that voice better than his own heartbeat. Slowly the man stood up. He took off his dirty work gloves, his movements heavy and hesitant. He turned around. Isabella stopped dead in her tracks. The wind seemed to die down around them. It was Liam. But it wasn't the Liam of the country club. The softness was gone from his face, replaced by hard angles and deep lines, etched by regret and hard labor. The arrogance that used to curl his lip was replaced by a profound, quiet sadness. "Bella," he whispered. Isabella gripped her purse strap, her knuckles whitening. "Liam." They stood there for a long moment, two ghosts from a past life, staring at each other across the divide of 5 years and $500 million. Leo looked between them, confused. "Mummy, you know the gardener." Isabella looked down at her son, at their son. Leo had Liam's chin. He had Liam's way of tilting his head when he was curious. "Yes, Leo," Isabella said, her voice steady but soft. I knew him a long time ago." Liam looked at the boy, his eyes filled with tears, swimming with a pain so raw it was hard to witness. He saw the dimple. He saw the locket hanging around Leo's neck. Isabella had kept it. He's big," Liam choked out. "He looks healthy." "He is," Isabella said. "He's smart. He wants to be an astronaut this week." Liam nodded, swallowing hard. He looked like he wanted to step forward to hug the child he had never held, but he kept his distance. He knew he had no right. The court order was a piece of paper, but the moral chasm between them was an ocean. "And Patricia?" Isabella asked, a formality. Liam looked down at his muddy boots. "She's in a state facility now. Dementia. She doesn't remember the estate. She doesn't remember the money. Some days, she doesn't remember me. I go on Sundays. It's quiet." Isabella felt a pang of pity, not for the woman who had tormented her, but for the son who was left carrying the burden. "I'm working my way up," Liam said, suddenly desperate for her to know he wasn't useless. "I'm a foreman now for the Parks Department. Honest work. I pay my own rent. No handouts." "I'm glad, Liam," Isabella said, and she meant it. "You look real." "I found the note," Liam said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "In the locket. I found it the day you evicted us. I know I was too late. I know I can never fix it. But Bella, not a day goes by. Not one single hour." He looked at Leo again, memorizing the boy's face. "I'm sorry," he said. "I don't expect forgiveness. I needed to say it to your face, not to a lawyer." Isabella looked at this man who had broken her heart, the man who had thrown her into the storm. She didn't feel love anymore. But she didn't feel hate either. She just felt a distant, peaceful closure. She stepped forward and placed a hand on Leo's shoulder. "Thank you, Liam," she said. "I accept your apology." She didn't offer to help him. She didn't offer him money or a job or a visitation schedule. That wasn't how real life worked. Actions have consequences that last forever. "Come on, Leo," she said, guiding the boy back toward the path. "We're going to be late for dinner. Bye, mister." Leo waved, oblivious to the tragedy that had just played out in front of him. "Goodbye, Leo." Liam whispered, his voice breaking on the name. He watched them walk away. He watched them until they were just silhouettes against the setting sun. He watched the life he could have had, the family he could have protected, disappear into the golden light of Savannah. Then Liam Rutherford put his work gloves back on. He picked up his rake, and he went back to tending the garden alone in the park, paying the price for the storm he had created. And that is the story of Isabella and Liam. It's a harsh reminder that life isn't just about the bank account you show to the world, but the character you show when no one is watching. Liam and Patricia were so obsessed with the image of wealth that they threw away the only thing that actually made them rich: love and loyalty. They learned too late that you should never look down on someone unless you are helping them up. Isabella didn't need the Kensington fortune to be a queen. She had her dignity from the start. But Liam, he needed to lose everything to finally become a man. In the end, he got his merger, but it was a merger with reality, and the cost was a lifetime of regret. If this story touched your heart or made you think, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more stories like this. And I have a question for you guys. Do you think Isabella should have let Liam see his son at the end? Or did he deserve to be a stranger after what he did? Let me know your honest thoughts in the comments below. I'll be reading them. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.